So I can tell you a little bit about what an agent does, how to get one, how not to get one. But first, it would be interesting to know who is here so I can tailor things. I don't want to tell you things you already know. So how many people here are writers? That's everybody, I think. Great. Okay, cool. How many of you have an agent? That's nobody. Okay. Interesting. How many of you have are published? About half. Great. And of those half, are you just published locally or also internationally? Hands up if you're published internationally as well. 2. Great. Okay. 3. Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So then a lot of writers, a lot of people already published, nobody with an agent. So I'll ask you, so what do you want to know from me? Do you want me to tell you why it's important to have an agent, what we do for you? Would that be useful?
I think particularly in the South African context, where a lot of the big publishers are open to people approaching them directly. So, what difference would an agent really make?
That's a really good question. So the question is, what difference does an agent really make in the local context? Okay, so all right. So what we do, basically, I'll just tell you quickly what we do first, and then I can just pinpoint why it's important to have an agent, even in the local context. Okay, so what we do is we represent you, we advocate for you. We take on books, and we are your proxy. So we represent your interests here, overseas, in adaptation, in everything that has to do with your book property. We work on commission, so we have a vested interest in your success. We only get paid on success, so if we don't sell your book, we don't eat. So we are tied to your destiny irrevocably. So we are on your side always, and we are always going to push for the best deal and the best, the best everything for you. Having said that, the best deal isn't always the richest deal. So we obviously will take into account advances, royalties, subsidiary rights, all of that technical stuff. But we also take care of other things like how you're treated, how you're looked after, what controls you have over your work, your cover, things like that. We're there, and also, so that's sort of at the once you've got the book ready to go stage. But even before that, we are a sounding board. So it's our job to know who's looking for what in the industry all over the world, here, everywhere else. We have meetings all the time, like all day, with publishers, editors overseas, producers overseas. So we have a bird's eye view of the global industry. So we know what should know, it's our job to know what people are looking for, what they'll respond to. So when you come to us to say, okay, I'm thinking of writing this book, and it's, I don't know, it's romantasy with at a dragon school. Well, I'll say, well, you're too late, because that's already a massive success, Fourth Wing, etc. So we can have these conversations about what to work on, how to work on things, how to position it. It's a career strategy. So we're there for the career strategy thing as well. Yes, any question? Oh, yes. Okay, so your question was, why is this important in the local context? Okay, so if you just want to publish locally, you're right, you do not need an agent. You can go direct to a publisher. They will more than likely really evaluate your project, and then if they like it, they will make an offer and they will publish. We sort of skip the queue, so we can go direct to people who we have relationships with, and we can say, I've got this terrific book that's just come in with this amazing new author who hasn't published before or who has published before. They've got this amazing profile. This book is terrific. It does this, and I can see that it would work really well in this list of yours. And we will do that all over town. So just talking about the local context, we'll do it all over town to gauge interest. And if we have more than one person interested, we'll manage that process about trying to see what is the best, try to get 2 or 3 offers so that we can then, maybe use that as leverage to improve certain aspects of the deal, and then you can make a decision then and have a choice about who you publish with and where you publish. We always get better deals on royalties than you can going yourself, just because we are across so many deals we know we can ask for. We also have our own, I also have my own contract. My own contract is the same contract pretty much, and it's all pre-negotiated with all of the local publishers, and it's a much better, more attractive for you contract than the standard contracts that you will be given. And there are certain things that I don't give, and that is because and not just me, I'm just talking about for all agents now. We can drill into, me specifically if you like, but just generally, all agents will want to be across everything. They won't want to carve out local rights or only overseas rights. It's not really in their interest. You have to be able to be across everybody's career, the whole career, but also you need to see what people are agreeing in different territories to see that they're not conflicting with each other. So what we will do then is we will make sure that we only give rights that are going to be exploited. So for local publishers, that's basically local rights. They're not going to, if you publish with Penguin here, a lot of people think, ooh, it's a Penguin book. Penguin will be bringing out my book all over the world. It doesn't work like that. Penguin is a local franchise. They will have to pitch those books that they're publishing here to different people in Penguin around the world in order to get a deal at Penguin. But they can't do that because that's not their job. They don't know who those people are. They don't know what they're looking for. That's the agent's job. So they can kind of send an email up to some colleagues overseas and hope spaghetti sticks on the wall, but they won't necessarily know who the right person is to approach with your book. So we will carve out rights that aren't going to be exploited, and then we will sell them elsewhere. So I work with a team of co-agents around the world. Sorry. But I have an amazing team of co-agents who I've worked with for many, many years in different territories, and they are experts in their market. So I have meetings every couple of months with my co-agents to chat about what new books are coming that might be interesting to the publishers in their territory. I pitch them, they read them, and then they decide to maybe take them on and sell them in different territories, so that you get lots of different rights deals. You're not just publishing locally. And then at the same time, I talk to producers about selling book-to-screen rights. But if you just want to publish here, or if you have a very niche particular book that you don't think is going to go elsewhere, then yes, you must absolutely just go direct. You must go direct, because as Mervyn touched on, it is very hard to get an agent, and we can talk about how to get one. The other thing is that you can, if you want to get an agent and you can't, but you have a local deal, you can use this to get an agent. So you can, because this is legitimizing. If you are a South African author writing in South Africa and a South African publisher publishes your book, this is a vote of confidence in your book from the local person who knows that this is obviously going to be a book that they will invest in because they think it will sell. So you can use that local deal to get an agent for your next book. Or if the agent is interested, they might be able to come back and renegotiate the deal. So they might say, we'd like these other rights back, please. You took all the rights, but we'd like these back. And for the most part, publishers here are very open to that. They all really want their authors to be happy and to do well. And so in most cases, they will be only too happy to give you any unexploited rights back if you ask. One thing on that I would say is that if you don't have an agent and they do take world rights, there is a chance that that book will end up on my desk anyway. So if they have, because I sell rights for all of these publishers, so they bring me the books that they own world rights in and say, would I like to sell rights on their behalf? And so I have obviously meetings, and we go through the list. I get pitched the books, and I take the ones I feel I can place overseas. And they go on my list, and then they get into my system, so I pitch them directly, but also my co-agents pitch them. If I was representing you directly, we wouldn't do that because there's a little layer there. So in that instance, I'm not representing you, and I will have no contact with you. I'm representing the publisher. They're my client. So I'm working on their interests, not your interests. So in that case, my fee comes off the top, and then the publisher takes whatever they've agreed in their contract with you, and then you get the rest. So if you have an agent, this bit goes to you. So that's another reason to have an agent overseas. Is that helpful? We sort of on the right track? No response. One response. Okay. Question at the back.
The use of and the proliferation of audiobooks in South Africa, good or bad, and is it worthwhile taking your book and making it an audiobook?
There's a whole conversation around audiobooks and how they're doing here. They're doing okay. It's growing, it's growth. It's definitely something to consider. I think for publishers, it's not always in their interest to do it locally because if the book's only published locally, because it's expensive and they very rarely get their costs back if they're just doing an audiobook locally. It's different if you sell your book in the States or in the UK and they take audiobook rights, then they will make an audiobook and they've got a much bigger market and they're much more likely to make that cost back. However, local publishers do sometimes make audiobooks because they think it's worthwhile. They think it's a nice thing to do or a good thing to do, or they think that the audiobook will be something special. For example, Anki Kruk's new book, Blood's Inner Rhyme, which came out I think 3 or 4 weeks ago and is already in its second reprinting, sold out. They are doing an audiobook with Anki reading. And they're doing an audiobook with Anki reading because that will be a thing of wonder, because the opportunity to listen to Anki Kruk reading her book in an audiobook is just such a special thing. So they're going to do that, but they're not going to do it for commercial means. They're doing it because it will be a beautiful thing. So lots of considerations around audiobooks, but also another publisher that I work with doesn't take ebook rights because it's not worth their while, and so I can sell those elsewhere. It really just depends on, and in all of these cases, we will negotiate rights that will be exploited. So we don't give rights to somebody who's not going to do anything with them. So it's all a negotiation. It's all a conversation. So yes, so that's what we do. So we take on books. We work with the author to make sure that they're the best they can be. Then we go and we sell them. It's a sales role. So an agent is a salesperson. So we get pitched lots of books all the time that are beautiful books, but we can't sell them, and then therefore we can't take them on. It doesn't mean it's not a good book. It doesn't mean we don't like the book. There's no right or wrong in this situation. We can only take on a book that we feel we can sell. We're not doing anybody any favors otherwise. And if you do write a book, we were talking about this earlier, you can self-publish as well. If it's maybe your book is very niche or personal and maybe won't find a large readership, but you can still self-publish in order to create your art, your work. That's definitely a possibility. But I don't work with self-published authors. I just work with trade authors. Okay. How are we doing? Any other questions?
As an agent, do you work with a specific kind of set of authors or kind of writing? You've talked about your little niche presses. Because sometimes it feels to me like an agent can be another gatekeeper in the publishing industry, and then it becomes your view as an agent of what you think is going to sell. And meanwhile, the book would actually do really well because it's like a slow burner book, as opposed to like selling like thousands in like 2 days kind of thing. So,
okay, great. So, yes, so that's really interesting. So, in terms of books that are gatekeeping and slow burner. So slow burner is great. I love slow burners. I have no problem with that. I don't have to sell a book for a huge advance. It's all about the life of the book and the career of the author. So the longer it lasts, the better for me. And also I love as an agent is to have lots of little deals in different territories where some agents would not bother with those because it's maybe $100 advance or $300 advance for Estonian rights or Armenian rights or something, but I think that's extremely important for the author to have their book translated into these languages and to have their book available in those territories. On the gatekeeper issue, I can assure you that we are desperate. Every time we open a new submission, we are desperate to fall in love with this book. We want to open this and for the hairs to stand up on the back of our necks. We want to just have to drop everything and just keep reading this book. We all want that. We're desperate to find something that we're in love with. Having said that, we're all just single, different people. So if you think of, if you're in a book club, you might be, or if think of all of your friends who read the same book as you, it's very rare that you all feel exactly the same way about every book that you read. You're all going to have differing opinions. And especially in a book club, you'll have big arguments maybe sometimes about people who loved a book, people who found it boring, people who just, who didn't find it clever enough, or the writing was shoddy. And they're still your friends, but they are right to have their own opinion. I'm just one person. Each agent is just one person. We have to take on things that we respond to. And part of that is because we then are selling to people who we know and have a relationship with, and we have to feel confident that we know that they will respond to it as well. In each case, you only need one yes. So you can approach like a couple of hundred agents. You just need one to have that response. And that agent, in turn, only needs one editor to have that response. And then you've got a published book. And what we do for the editor is we're like a filtering service, really. So especially overseas, most publishers will not accept submissions direct from authors. They really need it to come from an agent. And that is partly because they know that agent's taste. So if a submission comes in from an agent, they can read the pitch. They know that the agent is hitting all the points that are going to speak to that editor, so that that editor knows what they're getting. This is the thing as well. So often I'll get a pitch from an author, and when I read the book, what I thought I was getting and what I got are very, very different. So it's also my job to make sure that I'm very clear that what an editor ends up reading is what they thought they were going to be reading. And also just to get them to read it, get them to start reading it. So on the gatekeeper, our gates are wide open. They're wide open. We're, come in. We want you. Yeah, we really want the great books. And slow burn. It's so one of the benefits, and this is true for my other agency as well. So my partner and Torchwood used to work for a big UK, he's South African British, but he used to work for a big screen agency in London, in Soho. And there, he always wanted to be repping lots of South Africans because there's so much talent here. But he found it really difficult to persuade the higher ups that it was worthwhile because the fees are smaller. And so when you're part of a big agency, you have to be making a certain amount of money every month to justify your position. Here, we don't have that, so we can do what we like. So I work for myself. I work with who I like. I don't have to justify my decisions to anyone. I can take on a small book that I think maybe will take a few years to find that one person, but that's okay. But if I was part of a bigger agency, it would be trickier. It depends. You've got some very well established agents who can do what they like as well, even at the big agencies. But even there, they will definitely have to have an eye to, how do we pay our rent? How do we pay our staff? It's just the way it is, the way the world works. We have to eat. So that's one of the benefits of being here and being a smaller agent. And I would say as well that when we'll go through next, if you like, how to approach agents, how not to approach them, maybe a few pet peeves. And then what I would say, because I'm bound to have forgotten it by the time we get there, is that there are lots of big agencies. You should definitely approach them, and you should definitely approach people within them, one or two people. But also, I would also have a look at little indie agencies, because you're going to have their people who are just more flexible, more light on their feet, more maybe able to take a chance on something a little bit different, something from somewhere that they haven't really heard of or don't really know much about. And likewise, in the big agencies, you might look for somebody who's recently promoted, maybe somebody who was an assistant for a few years and now is starting their own list. They'll be hungry. They'll be really hungry to find new voices, people to champion, and they'll also have more time to give to you. Because as your list grows, your time evaporates very, very quickly. So they will have more time to give to you, more attention, and they will also be really hungry on your behalf. So that's it. Okay, how to approach an agent. Okay, so first of all, how to choose an agent. So there's a lot of things online you'll see, choose your agent carefully. Frankly, the choice really won't be yours. I'm really sorry to say. It's very, very hard to get an agent. I say this as a writer who also got an agent before I became an agent. So I know how hard it is firsthand to get an agent. Yes. Sure. The book needs to be finished. But it doesn't need to have a cover. Shouldn't have a cover. No, you're sending a Word document. Yeah. 12 point New Roman, nothing fancy, no fancy. Yeah, you're yeah. Yes. So okay. So we'll go about what to put in your letter in a second. But before that, about how to choose who to approach. You're going to have to spend a lot of time online. This is part of the job. If you want an agent, the research is a part of the job, and people don't like it because it's hard and it takes a long time. But for some people are very lucky and they get representation the first time they try. For most people, they're trying for a very long time. One way to do it, I think, is an easy way to figure out who might respond to your book is to go into Mervyn's shop and have a look around and see what books on the shelves are like your book or similar to your book, and then look at the acknowledgements page. It's usually at the front or at the back, and then see who they thank, and then who their agent is. And find out who their agent is, and then approach them. And then you can say, look, I read, Joe Bloggs' amazing novel, and I saw that you were thanked in the acknowledgements, and so I had to reach out to you with my book because it's similar for these reasons, also different for these reasons. That's one way to find who might represent you. You can also go on, there's a ton of resources online. There's the Artists and Writers Yearbook, which is updated every year. That's very UK centric, I think. I haven't looked at it in a long time. It's very UK centric. But actually, American agents are much more open with information, much more free with information. So you will find that there are centralized areas where people post information about what they're looking for. So there's lots of. I don't know what these sites are because I don't look for agents. That's your job, not my job. So you go wild and spend a long time on Google figuring out who's doing what, who's looking for what. Okay, and then next, have a look at their submission guidelines. You can fluff around the edges a little bit, but as much as possible, and you're going to want to have a template that you use for lots of different people. But it is a time-consuming business, and I would recommend that you read the guidelines and follow them as much as you can. A couple of things you must not do, and you cannot attach anything, because can anybody guess why you shouldn't attach something without being asked? It's 2 reasons. I'll tell you. Okay, so the first one is we don't open it because we don't know if there's going to be a virus in it, and then or we don't know you. You're a complete stranger, and so we're not going to click on links or open attachments that we don't know where they're from. The other reason is a legal reason. So if you send me a book as an attachment, or anything, or a full book, even pasted in the body of your email, we'll reject it. We'll delete it straight away. And that is because we may be working with somebody who has something very similar. So we do not click on links, we don't open attachments. We'll read your query letter, and then if we respond to it, if we think we can sell it, we'll ask for more. So my guidelines are like a very traditional query letter, and you need to practice this. You need to get people to read it for you. I would always also read it backwards, just to make sure that you're not that you don't have typos, and that you don't have grammar errors. Remember to put your name in your query letter. Lots of people do not, and so we respond, dear, Foxytrot 1427, whatever. Thank you for submitting your book. Make sure your name is in there. So you'll say hello. You'll say who you are, and you'll tell me what you're pitching. And then you'll tell me a little bit about yourself. One of my pet peeves is people who do this in the third person. like Jane Doe is an author who lives in Hermanus. So Jane, you're talking to me. I'm a real person. You're a real person. So tell me who you are. Direct. Let me just talk to me like I'm not a robot. I'm a person. So I want to know as well a little bit about the book. And so there are a few things that you really need to hit. We need to know what the genre is and get this right. People get this wrong all the time, especially in Kidlit. They say, I've got a middle grade novel featuring a 6-year-old talking panda who will be suitable for kids age 14 to 16. Okay, so I already know that this isn't going to work. You haven't done your research because 16-year-olds do not read books about talking pandas, with talking pandas. They read very much more adult novels, much more. So you really need to know this. These are things that won't be necessarily deal breakers, but when you're reading as many submissions as all agents do, we get pitched all the time. These are little kind of signifiers to us, whether we are conscious or not, that this isn't going to be right for us. So you want to make sure that you eliminate all of those, because we're reading quite quickly. We're going to, do I like this? Do I like this? Do I like this? If there is a spelling mistake on the first line, if you haven't put your name in, if you get the genre wrong, if you say I've got an epic novel of 13,000 words long or 330,000 words long, they show me that you haven't done your research. And these are little flags. These are little things that whether we notice them or not, they stack up so that when we're making our decision, which has to be quite quick and very much based on emotion and emotional reaction to the writing, they count against you. So I would try and just make sure you're ticking the boxes that are going to raise you in our estimation as we read, consciously or unconsciously. And then it's just really worth knowing what people are looking for. So some things people just happen to be like, so you can't always know this either. If people change. That was another question that I didn't answer that you asked as well, like what do you look for? That was part of the gatekeeper question. It really depends. So I always say, okay, I'm not doing any more literary fiction. I'm not doing any more nonfiction. And then something comes across my desk and I'm like, ooh, I have to have this one. So I look at everything. I like everything. I'm not snobbish at all when it comes to genre. I'll read absolutely everything. Some things I like, but I won't take on because I know I won't be able to sell. But that's a different consideration. Some people are just really like romance. Some people just like crime and thrillers, and you'll find that out as you research these people. Okay, so then when you describe your book, I recommend, and you'll have to practice this. There's loads of information online about how to do this, and I can't stress that you really are competing for attention with thousands of other people all the time. So you really have to kind of stand out as well as you can. I think what works well, not just for me, I think, but for a lot of people, is if you follow the kind of the film format. We have a tagline and a log line. So a tagline is a one line, what this is about. A log line is almost like a paragraph, and it's who is the main character, what do they want, why do they care, why do we care, and what's in their way. That's basically it in the paragraph, and then you can expand a little on that. And it's really important that we know when we're reading that what genre it is, how long it is, and that's it, basically. That's, you can describe your whole book and give us a picture of whether we want to read more in maybe 15 lines, 15, 20 lines. You don't want to go much longer than that, but you can. If it's a very complicated book, you can. That's for fiction. Non-fiction is a different beast, and we can chat about that as well. Is everybody here fiction? No, non-fiction as well. Okay, so we can definitely chat about non-fiction too. So non-fiction is a little bit different. It depends what you're writing in non-fiction. So if you're writing memoir, you will treat it as though, or autofiction, something like that, then you will treat it as though it's a fiction submission. You'll still do the log line, the tagline, and you're still selling the story. If it's non-fiction, it's more, the format is very important. So is this narrative non-fiction? Is it prescriptive? Is it a how-to? if it's a how-to or if it's on a very specific subject like science or history or current affairs, then we'll need to know who you are and what qualifies you to write this book, and what would make us want to buy this book from you rather than a similar book from an expert or somebody who's already been published. And for a fiction proposal, when you're approaching agents, you will need to have finished your full novel. It'll need to be very polished and ready to go, no errors. For nonfiction, that isn't the case. You can pitch a proposal and the first 3 chapters or a couple of sample chapters. So you don't have to finish a nonfiction book before you go out and look for, unless it's memoir. In that case, you do. You have to treat it like a novel. Is that my time? Are there any more questions? Yes. Hello.
Hi there. I just wanted to ask about when it comes to sort of developing or developmental edits with a manuscript, does that happen at all with agents? Or is it still the pitch just goes to an editor and then from there you start?
That's a really excellent question, and it really depends. It depends on the agent, and it depends on the relationship the agent has with her author. So I do tend to do that a lot, and especially with authors that I've worked with for a very long time, because we have like a shorthand. And so I definitely do a lot of editing for those clients. Some clients don't need it, don't want it. I've got 2 clients who, when they submit a book, it's perfect. There's no typo. It's creepy. It's like, oh, what's going on here? Like, it's so perfect. There's like no typos, and there's really nothing I can add. But that's 2 people in my whole career. Everybody else can use help, and sometimes I'll see how I can help improve it. Sometimes I won't, and then we'll go to the editor, and the editor will come in. There's always, so that will just be a very kind of top level, or maybe the structure could, or this character, or whatever, to help you get it ready. And then when it goes out, then it will be edited again, obviously with the editor. But yes, we do. Some agents are known for this. They're very good at this, and they love it. Like Isabel Dixon, who's a South African agent who works in the UK. She's excellent at this, and she's known for just really being brilliant at this. Isabel Dixon? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then others just don't. They just don't have the time. Maybe they've got a bigger list. They don't have. So it really is a very personal thing. Some agents love doing it. Some don't. And it also depends what you want. So if you want it, but what I would say is that if you're approaching an agent for the first time, like looking for an agent, you don't have one, then it should be pretty perfect. Yeah, it'll be harder to secure an agent if it needs a lot of work. But once you have an agent, then yeah, you can. Then you're fine. Then you can do what you like. Then you can go, ooh, I've got an idea. Here's the first 3 chapters, and then we can help out. But I wouldn't do that to someone who doesn't know you. Any other questions before? Oh, yes.
I wanted to ask, you were saying that you sort of know what publishers are looking for around the world. Is there a specific trend at the moment of what people are looking for? Yeah,
that's really, interesting. So, so also we read the trades every day. So like every morning, people think I'm just lying on my sofa like reading novels. I'm not. I'm reading like the bookseller and Publishers Marketplace and Publishers Lunch to see who's buying what. It's not often super useful for me to tell you now what's being bought, because by the time then you write that book and get it to me and I start pitching it, that trend will have maybe passed. So there was a trend a few years ago, this whole romanticy thing, but it's ongoing. People are still buying these books for big advances in the UK and in the US. Sorry, Mervyn, it's still massive. And there are lots of publishers now are opening new imprints just for romanticy and romance. So the romanticy trend does not look to be dying off anytime soon. There are a few books that will get massive advances, but most of them won't. So it became a big thing, and then people were buying them for huge money and big film deals, and then they tail off, but you still have the odd big one. What I would say though as well, so the Onyx Storm is the 3rd book in the the Fourth Wing series. So the film and TV rights were sold in that book, but it hasn't nothing's happened yet because it's just such an expensive thing to adapt. Because it's dragons, so it. So if you so there's that to bear in mind. Okay, so romance romanticity is shows no sign of going anywhere. Crime and thriller is perennial. I am struggling to sell crime and thriller that's set here. I've got my big authors who sell and will always sell, but it's getting hard for new authors in those genres to break through, because it's such a massive. There are so many people writing in that genre. It's hard to break through, unless you've broken out here first, and then it's a little bit easier. But even then, not guaranteed. What else? Contemporary kids books. So in the so I do a lot of kidlit, and people don't. So this you need to. We can have a chat afterwards if you also write kidlit, but there's very. The age groups are very kind of strict, and there's very little overlap between age groups. So if you're writing a picture book, you need to know that a 3 to 5-year-old will be reading it, that a 7-year-old will not be reading a picture book. So it has to be tailored to the 3 to 5-year-old. If you're writing a book for a 5 to 7-year-old, you can have talking animals, but 7 to 9 you cannot. Like these things you need to know, and then you learn as you read the trades and talk to people. Other trends, what are you seeing? You can talk to this as well when you come.
Yeah, I mean, romance is massive at the moment. Feminist romance.
Self-help, I sell a lot of self-help. But like narrative, so about resilience, raising children well, like thoughtful narrative self-help.
There's a trend in the UK that's coming out that they call femgore, which is like...
Yes.
Can you just say that a little bit louder?
Femgore.
Femgore, which is sort of, you know, cannibalism.
What is that?
Yes, cannibalism.
Very gross.
Yeah, but I think I'm going to hand over to you now anyway, because I think that's my time, and then we can talk about femgore at the end.
Can I ask you one
Yes.
last question, which may be a cheeky question, you may not be able to answer, I'm not sure. What proportion of books that you take on do you sell?
This is a very good question, and I was actually thinking about that the other day. So some books I take, so it depends whether I take on books for an author or a publisher. Sometimes with a publisher, it's a book that I don't think I'm going to be able to sell this, but I'll take a chance. And so I'm not investing in a long-term strategic relationship with the author. I'm just taking a chance on the book. Some of them hit, some of them don't. I don't really know numbers-wise. In authors, I don't stop going until I sell the books. Like a couple of books that like Fiona Snicker's Lacuna. I loved that book so much. Like I loved it, and it took me 5 years to sell, I think. And then I sold UK, US, Italian, and film and TV. But it took 5 years of constantly knocking on doors. So I don't tend to give up for like that. If it's a book that I really love, that I think it's gonna work. But some books I will just take a chance on, but not when I've got the author's hopes in my hands, hopes and dreams in my hands. Cool. Okay.
Though I would be interested to know if any of you have worked with a publicity department or a PR person to promote your books that have been published, or do you have any experience in that? Show of hands there at the back. Okay. All right. So, yeah, please, as I go, feel free to ask any questions. But yeah, let's kick it off. So I think a lot of people don't know what publicity is. So I think I will start with explaining. Why is that on the screen? That block. Sorry. Oh, there it's. Okay. All right. So. I think a lot of people think what we do is this. It always looks very glamorous from the outside because we're always at events and we're running around with authors such as yourself, getting you from point A to B. But I think this is more of an accurate depiction of what it is to be a publicist. So just to give you some... Where's the rest? Sorry. Oh, there. Okay. So I thought just to begin, it would be good to explain the difference between public relations, a public relations professional, and then a publicist, which, you know, I manage a team, but I'm also a publicist myself. So I look after one of our big international imprints at Jonathan Ball, which is Hachette. So I work on all their imprints and I do the publicity for them here in South Africa for their books. But the difference is, as you can see, just to explain it, and I hope it makes sense, Mervyn, for you specifically. But yes, public relations is a strategic long-term process that includes various communication tactics, not just media. And PR pros focus on a broader range of tasks, including crisis management, reputation management, and building relationships with various stakeholders. And then, whereas in publicity or as a publicist, we work and we focus more narrowly. So we are focused on securing media coverage for books, and building a positive public image for an individual client, like an author, celebrity, or politician, but in our case, authors. And this we are often involved in writing press releases, coordinating media interactions, and managing an author's media presence and schedule, etc. Then also just to explain marketing versus publicity. So we work very closely with our marketing department, and sometimes we have a few roles that are a mixed role. So we have, for example, a children's coordinator who does marketing and publicity, because obviously it sits very closely together. But just to give you some context, so marketing together with sales, they work very closely together as well. They get the book on the shelf. So they work directly with the retailers and independent bookstores like Mervyn, like Book Lounge. An example that I can use as well is that the marketing department is also a department where money is exchanged or where a transaction is made. So it's paid advertising, where we do specific promotions with retailers, we pay to do that. It's like the homebrew campaigns, for example, for exclusive books. There's a fee involved there, for example. So that's how we distinguish between the two departments. And we always say publicity gets your book off the shelf. So when someone is reading about your book in the media, they will probably go buy, if they are interested, they will go out and they will buy it because they've read about it in Sunday Times or on News 24 or wherever they consume their news. So yes, I've said examples for marketing. So our marketing department deals with our social media side of things. They also do all the banners that we print, the paid advertising, the branded t-shirts, or anything where you pay for something is our marketing department. And then publicity is a free service, so we aim to gain media coverage and build awareness without paying for it. So we send a review copy to someone, a book editor, and that's the exchange. They get their book and they decide if they want to review it, and whether that's a positive or a negative review, unfortunately we don't have any control over that either. Reviews are very subjective. But yeah, mostly I must say, I think I've maybe had one very negative review, but mostly reviewers in South Africa are nice and they give it a very objective view. No. So that's just the difference between marketing and publicity. I hope it makes sense. I don't know if there's any questions at this point. Then just to give you a bit of insight into what I actually do in my job and on a day-to-day basis. So I obviously publicize books, authors, and sometimes our company and its imprints. And everyone always asks, how do I do this? And I always say that it's all about building relationships. We are in the business of relationships. So it's with media, it's with authors, and it's with the book trade, wonderful people like Mervyn, that we try and keep on our side. And there's a lot of pivoting involved. There's a lot of pivoting involved because everyone we deal with is very different. So it's also adapting to different authors, different people. Yeah, I always say that, you know, you can be a good parent if you can do admin. And in publicity, if you are good with people, then you can do publicity, basically. So, and then what does this look like? So, just do this. Sorry, just missing a paper. All right, so what it looks like from my side, or in the publicity space, is that we meet with authors very regularly, and that is to establish a connection, their pool of contacts, to discuss book launches, interviews, etc. We deal with the media on a daily basis, so that's an ongoing process. We set up one-on-one meetings. We're pitching books to them regularly. We get to know them. We know what they like, what they dislike, what they would review, who they would interview, and that's all part of the relationship building that I just mentioned. So it's taking the time to get to know the media, specifically the individual person and what they like to read. And then the book trade, it's also just setting up meetings with them, talking to them, and just letting them know about upcoming books, upcoming events, and wanting to do things with them. We also try and spread all our book launches across retailers, so we try and give everyone a fair share of events. Mervyn can attest to that. But yeah, as well as knowing how to best promote the books, as publicists, you know, we need to keep on top of the wider news and the cultural agenda, because we're always fighting for space in the media, and there's always a bigger story or something else. So it's always good to know what's happening, and also when you need to pitch to media, there might be an angle there that you can use if it's related to a current affairs topic or something that's in the news. And then I just thought I would just talk through what a publicity campaign or a plan looks like. So we usually meet with authors about 3 months ahead of publication, sometimes even earlier. It all depends on what the release is and what the pressure points are. And then things that we discuss and consider together with an author are angles for media pitches and overall media strategy. So also then that goes with that is, what is the target audience? Who is the target audience? Is there mention of a specific place in the book, etc.? So it's always good to chat to an author about this, and it's good to know this about your own work that you're writing. So, because to have specific angles that you can go to the media with is what make or break, whether they're going to do something with it. Then press releases and the date of when that gets sent out, talking about a curated media list together with an author. Book launches, it's also good to know where an author is based. So if you're going to be launching in your area, then it's probably a good idea, because you know your friends and family might be close. So we always look geographically where authors are based. Media to target for interviews and reviews. It's also good to know whether an author is comfortable being on TV or comfortable doing a one-on-one interview. So these are all things that we chat to authors about. And then any other publicity opportunities that the author might have in mind, you know, we're always open to discuss that. And one thing I just wanted to touch on as well is we always ask an author if they are on social media, or whether they have a big social media following, whether they post actively, because it does help. It does help to promote your book. I think we are in the day and age where, you know, everything is online, and it is a space for you to promote your book. Having said that, though, we do work with authors, many authors who are not online as well. So there are ways of working around it, and I think it all depends also what type of book you are writing or publishing, and whether that feeds into the online sort of space, because there's BookTok, which I'm sure probably some of you are on and part of, on TikTok. So there's a massive sort of online space for that. But yeah, it's not it's a good thing, but also you can work around it. So there's pros and cons for that. And I think that's sort of just a very broad outline of what I do. So I don't know if there are any specific questions from anyone. Yes.
You're asking a lot of questions. So now I've taken Aoife's advice and I'm now self-publishing my book. What are the things that I can do at a minimum as an author to publicize my own work that's not going to cost me a lot of money, that is going to enable me to attract an audience that's bigger than my little circle of friends and family that I've got?
So I would say, are you on social media or not? Obviously, it's always nice to utilize any social media channels you might have. But the other thing is to just do a bit of research. I would say, the information is out there of who the books editors are in the media. So it's always a good sort of thing to find contacts, or sometimes there's very generic email addresses, but even that, just to sort of create a press release. There's also online a lot of information that can show you how to write a press release. And like I said, if you can find some angle or hook that you think a specific media house would be interested in, then I would think, write something, send it to them, see if you can send it out to a few book editors and see if you get any response. I would say that's something to do. Just trying to think what else. I don't know if you guys have any input. I'm trying to think. Yeah, have you promoted one of your books before by yourself?
No. I have self-published something, but I have worked more with publishers than on my own. So
Okay.
I think it's just a kind of general question.
Okay. Look, we also always say your own network is also very important. So word of mouth, spreading it via your own networks, using people that might spread it via their networks. I always say that if you know someone somewhere, use that relationship. It comes down to relationships again. But use those people who might spread the word for you on a bigger platform. That's what I would say. Yes. Oh.
Yeah, good question for me. It's a two-part question, sort of linked. The first is you've spoken a lot about media as part of your job in terms of publicity, and my question is what/who is media now, right? When I started in the book trade, people read newspapers. Newspapers had book pages. I know what media was then. I'm not sure what media is now. I know part of it maybe it's John Nathan on Tape Talk, maybe it's specific magazines, whatever. And secondly, is there specific media that you go, I've secured this for my author, and you do high fives all around in the office because there's a link between that media and sales that is obvious to you?
Interesting questions. Look, the media landscape is changing all the time, like Mervyn has said now. So actual coverage, actually getting inches in a paper has shrunk over the last few years. So a lot of it has moved online, but a lot of it also hasn't moved anywhere or has just completely died down. So the amount of people we work with, the list of people, if I must say that, is definitely smaller. But we also try and find, there's also the influencer thing, which I don't really want to touch. I don't deal with that directly, so our marketing department does. But, there's also that influencer, people have moved towards influencers sort of, to market their books. which has become a big thing as well. You know, moving with the times, moving online, and like trying to get your books to people who've got a big following online and trying to get them to talk about it. So that's one part of it. And the other part, I mean, the print, actual physical print newspapers, they're not what they used to be. Even the circulation is not what it used to be. Sunday Times used to be the paper to get something in, but it's not anymore. We used to do high fives long ago when we got something into Sunday Times, but the numbers aren't there anymore. I'm hoping no one works for Sunday Times that sit here, but that's just one example. Like, it's not what it used to be. So also the quality of some of the papers and some of the media houses, you know, it used to be these full newsrooms, you know, and now it's a lot of junior people coming into newsrooms having to do the job of 3 people. So obviously we're also very aware of that, and we have to think about that when we pitch. So it's difficult, if that answers your question. But, you know, the ones that are still there, you know, there's Business Day, they still do a lot of book stuff. The Afrikaans newspapers, it's basically Die Burger who's still around, you know, they do stuff. So the few who are left, they do still give books a bit of attention. But yeah, it's also working, like I said, bloggers and influencers and that sort of thing, trying to find new avenues for books. And to answer your question about the high five, John Matham, obviously we have a good relationship with him, but he does a lot for books, so we're always happy when we can get something onto Cape Talk. But yeah, I don't know about proper high fives anymore. Maybe that's also a bit sad, but you know, I think we're just always happy if we can get coverage. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yes.
I was interested to know what publicity is paid for and what publicity is just self-generated. For example, my book's in Foyles in London. Foyles have got 35 kilometres of shelf space. So there's my book standing in the 35 kilometres. Unless there's publicity somewhere, it's going to be pretty rare. You know, I'm not Beyonce, so it's going to be pretty rare that someone picks my book out. So it's a question of publicity, and whether that publicity is paid for or whether it's self-generated in some way, some form or other. That's the first thing I'd like you to views on.
Sure, yeah. I mean, like I tried to explain, so marketing is more paid for exercise, right? So whether that's having bookmarks of your book or some nice standees in the shop or point of sale items. So that would usually be something that, you know, if you are with a publisher, that would do that. But paid for publicity, we don't really, you know, pay for, as soon as you pay, it becomes a paid for ad, which is a marketing thing rather than a publicity thing. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. So
is all the marketing collateral paid for by publishing?
Yes, so that's how we usually do that. Yes.
2 questions. One, how do you measure success? How do you know that what you've done translates into success? I know it's a harsh question, sorry. And the other is, what does an ideal author look like to you?
An ideal author, tall, dark, and handsome, I would say. No, it's a good question of the measurement, and it's something that people. Oh yes. So Aoife asked, how do we measure a successful campaign or successful publicity, and then what an ideal author looks like is the second question. So to measure, we obviously have a media tracking service because we have to report on what we do and, you know, what coverage we are getting, because that's the only way that we can. But I think publicity and marketing is so it's such a difficult thing to actually say what the impact is, because you can't know exactly. It's not like sales where you have a target and a budget and numbers. So it's very difficult to say. But I mean, for us, I think it's if you have a plan, a publicity plan, and you execute everything that you want to execute on that plan. And sometimes it differs from book to book, but it might not be hitting all the big media houses. It might be targeting niche publications. And if we actually get that right for a specific title, we see that as a success. So it all depends on the topic of the book and what we are trying to do, I would say, if that makes sense. But yeah, it is a very difficult thing to track and to know whether this thing that we did actually amounted to sales. We get asked this so many times, specifically from the UK publishers and the US publishers. It's like, you know, the interview just happened and the next day they're like, so what are the sales like? You know, but it's just so difficult to track in that way. I don't think there's anything specific. Certain publications, you know, if we get something in there, we know it's worth it, just in terms of, you know, what we see. But you don't see, I mean, you can't go and look at the immediate spike in sales. It's very difficult. And then an ideal author. I think I've worked with a lot of different authors, and I always say the ones that are willing to work, because like we come in after all the hard work has actually been done. So you've been writing this book maybe for years, and it's a lot of work, and now it's published. Now we come in and we're like, okay, you need to work more, but this is the fun stuff. Like, this is the, like, if you're willing to talk to people about your book, you know, do the events, do the interviews, do whatever comes across your path. I always love a hardworking author and someone who's willing to do the work, because it makes a difference. So if you're not going to do it, your book is not going to sell. I can say that. I mean, we've also had, there are cases where it's not, but I always say, if an author is willing to work and just, you know, do what's needed, then that's what my ideal author looks like. If that makes sense. Yes, also tall, dark and handsome. Yes.
My question is sort of on that point as well. As someone who's worked in publicity, what's been your favorite publicity campaign, and what did the author bring to that to make it your favorite so far?
Sure.
It's difficult. Can't probably name names, or should I name names? So I've worked across. I've worked a lot on our local side. I would say, I think one of my favorite authors has been Pieter de Tooy, who published Stellenbosch Mafia and ANC Billionaires, and last year Super Caders. And it's for the reason that he works hard. It's nothing else. There's just nothing is ever too much. You know, I would say that was some great campaigns that I worked on. Sure, I must think about this. Trying to think who I've worked with over the years. Internationally, I've also done a few tours with authors here. That's been amazing. I recently toured now at the Franschhoek Literary Festival. We had Abby Dare out. She wrote The Girl with the Louding Voice. I don't know if you've ever heard of that book, but she was also absolutely fantastic. Just so nice and willing to do things. And I think people that don't have a lot of hang-ups, you know, I'm all for that, because you do get the other side of it. So, I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Yes.
Give us a case study of one of your most successful pieces of media that you've placed that led to something that you could actually measure, or maybe saw the effect of a couple of months down the line, or even a year. Just something to sort of maybe from start to finish of how that worked out for you.
So can you repeat the question?
So the question was, what sort of piece of media that I placed have I seen that, could I, was the question that whether I could see an actual...
Yeah, just a case study or something.
A case study.
Yeah, like a case that was successful and the result was...
Okay, something that I placed that was successful and that, you know, the result was something great. I think that's every day for me. No, I'm joking. I'm trying to think of something specific. Like I said, these days it really is a win just to get some coverage. But I can tell you about one thing actually. So it was actually not me, but one of my publicists in my team. I think it was when, I'm just trying to think which book it was. I think it was the one on the Boris Johnson book. Was it that? It was one of those very controversial figures, but we got the author. So we got News 24 and Netwerk 24. We got one of the journalists at Netwerk, Marie Lavita, he's quite a well-known profile writer, to interview the author, and then News 24 used it, translated it, and used the exact same piece to run at the same time. And I think that was quite and we sort of orchestrated that because of relationships. Keyword today. But yeah, so I think that was quite something, and you know, it sort of ran together, Afrikaans and English, so it reached both markets, and I think for us that was quite successful in the end. Yeah.
Yes, I have a little bit of a question about timing and when to do certain kind of like when to execute certain media strategies. And obviously you have quite a runway until your publishing date where you could be doing stuff independently around, I don't know, like Instagram or sign up to a newsletter kind of thing to kind of start to build the hype, and possibly leading up to signing up for pre-sales. But then at what point is it too far out that if you did a radio interview but it wasn't published yet, that then listeners won't retain that information for a month? Or like, what are those kind of dates if you know those?
Okay, so yeah, the question is just around timing of publicity and how far in advance you should start talking about a book. So I think it's very interesting because we are very different to the UK, for example, and the US. So they do pre-campaigns months in advance, and it works for them. But in South Africa, I think we're still very much behind. Like, we don't think in that way. So we would sometimes, I think the most we would do about a book in advance is about a month, if it's a local book, just because people like to read about something or they hear about something and then they want to go buy the book that day. And that's just how it is in South Africa, and that's our experience of it. So we also we would say to an author, about 2 weeks before publication, post your cover online, if you're on social media, to say my book is coming. There are exceptions where we launch pre-order campaigns, but then it must be, there are reasons for it, but it doesn't work for everything. So we usually try and have every media or anything media related run when the book is on the shelf. So that's how we time it. One more question. Okay, one more question. And then I hope that answers the question. Okay. Is there anyone else? Cool. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Is this on? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, cool. I thought I would basically talk about two questions, because they're the sort of questions that seem to get asked the most of me around the book lounge. And the one is, how does a book get stocked at the book lounge? How does it end up on the shelves? And the other is, what factors increase the likelihood of the book actually selling or selling well? And within that, I'm going to talk about both books that are published by what we call trade publishers, publishers who submit books to us, the Jonathan Balls, Penguin Random House, Jacana, etc., and self-published books. I want to start with a disclaimer, a very large disclaimer, and that is that the Book Lounge, my shop, is a very, very small, unrepresentative bubble of the book trade in the country. When Aoife earlier was talking about what? Romanticy? Yeah, it's like, don't know what that is. Well, kind of vaguely, but yeah, not a thing for us, right? Also, another thing that is not a thing for us is when Jean-Marie was talking about publishers paying book shops to do certain things like homebrew and stuff like that. No, not a thing for us. Nobody pays us to do anything, unfortunately. Although I do have some thoughts about that, yeah. Okay, so in terms of how a book gets stocked, how does a book get onto the shelf of the Book Lounge? Starting with publishers. Well, aren't you guys late? And I thought you'd left. Okay, so the first part of this is books that are published by actual real publishers, okay? So the publishers they employ sales reps, and those reps come around to us with the bigger publishers once a month. Smaller publishers who don't have that many books, sometimes it can be once every 2 months. Some publishers don't come around to us, maybe they'll email us lists, that kind of thing. I brought along, and when a rep comes around, in the trade it's called a subscription, and we talk about subs. Okay, so to use one or the biggest example, okay, Jonathan Ball, who Jean-Marie works for, they have got 5 different sales reps in Cape Town, or in the Western Cape, okay? Each of those reps has got a different list that they are selling to us, trying to sell to us each month, based on who the publishers of those books are. So Jonathan Ball is a local publisher. We publish South African books, and they also publish in this market, or distribute in this market, loads and loads of books published by different publishers overseas. Okay, so 2 of their reps will show us the books published by Hachette, which is one of the biggest sort of publishing conglomerates overseas. One of their sales reps just does kids' books. Another, the 4th one does HarperCollins and Simon & Schuster, and then the 5th one does their local publishing and the indie publishers from the UK, your Faber, your Bloomsbury, your Profile, those kinds of publishers. This is one sub sheet. This is from Yaku, who does the local and indies. Okay, I'm going to put the mic down for a sec. Each line on this is a book. And I repeat, one of 5 reps that Jonathan Ball has who see us once a month. Sorry, what time period? Once a month, yeah. So this is the books that they will be publishing. This was the April sub randomly. So this was the books, the list of books that part of Jonathan Ball is trying to sell to us that are due to be available in April. And this was, that sub would have been done in January. Okay, so they work 3 to 4 months in advance. I have cheated a little bit in that this is probably the biggest sub. Okay, they're not all like that, but it gives you some sense of the books that are being offered to us the whole time. And I'll come back to books that are offered to us by trade publishers. In terms of people who have self-published or published with very, very small independent publishers, which often comes down to the same thing, the process is obviously completely different. There is nobody representing you as a self-published author. And how your book then ends up on our shelves is through individual contact. You contact us and we have a discussion, right? Overriding principle, irrespective of whether your book is published by the biggest corporate in the world or you've published it yourself, is quite simply, do we think we can sell the book? Number one. Number two, related to it, not entirely the same thing, do we think this book is important? Okay? I'm going to talk a little bit now about the process if you are published by a trade publisher, a Jonathan Ball, Penguin Random House, Jacana, Penguin, etc. There is a massive difference in quality of the sales reps between the sales reps working for different publishers. Okay? One sales rep will come with their list of stuff that is coming out in 3 months' time, and they know the book lounge, they know the kinds of things we're interested in, they know, most importantly, what they're actually selling. Okay, so they cannot read everything that they're selling, but they can read some books, and they can say, Mervyn, I know this title looks ridiculous. I know you've never heard of this author, but this book is amazing. Okay, it blew me away. And if I have a trusting relationship with that sales rep, which I do with many, I'll go, cool, yeah, we'll take it, right? You get other sales reps who either come around to see us or just send us lists via email where it's a spreadsheet. Okay? And it's a spreadsheet which is then possibly accompanied by images of covers or possibly not. Possibly some description of each book, possibly not. It may be tricky, but it's really important for you as a writer to understand who is selling your book and what kind of job they're doing. Okay? And you can always just come and ask me. I'll tell you whether the publisher who's publishing your book is going to do it justice or not. Contrary to what your publisher may tell you, apologies, Jean-Marie, just because you're published by a trade publisher, it doesn't mean you're not allowed to talk to us as a bookstore. Okay? We have absolutely no problem with that. A lot of times I get an email or a phone call from a publisher, from somebody in publicity or somebody in actual publishing, going, oh, I'm so sorry that bloody author contacted you. I'm like, it's not a problem. Okay, we're quite happy to deal with authors. We actually love dealing with authors. Most authors, except the ones who are really rude to us. Those ones we don't like dealing with that much. But don't nag us. Work with your publisher and work with us, okay, and communicate clearly. As a self-published author or a very small publisher who maybe doesn't sell books, on an individual basis with a rep, or their publisher's got a rep who's just useless, that kind of thing. We get contacted a lot by self-published authors going, I've got this book, will you stock it, right? We ask for you to send us some kind of overview of the book, okay, so a description, give us a sense of what the book is. A sample of the writing, if at all possible. Okay, you don't have to send us the whole book. We don't need a PDF or a Word document of 300 pages, but a couple of chapters is really, really useful. Send us an image of the cover, and then the boring stuff. Send us the ISBN number, the price that you want for the book, and I'll talk a little bit more about price in a minute. The decisions that we make. All the decisions that we make in terms of what we are going to stock, clearly they're subjective, okay? As I said earlier, we are buying books because we think we can sell them, right? And we look at things like the quality of writing. We look at the genre, okay? We are interested in South African writers telling their stories. We are not really that interested anyway, in dragons and romantasy and all that kind of shit, okay? Yeah, we do stock some of that stuff, but that's not what we're passionate about, okay? We're passionate about good writing and we are also passionate about South Africans telling their stories, particularly underrepresented stories, marginalized voices. Sorry to say this, younger writers, incredibly important. That's not to say that we don't look at older writers, or we don't look at white people who look like me. We look at everything, okay? But there's also a politics to running a bookstore. Pricing. And this is important if you're self-publishing. If you're published by a trade publisher, you have no, that's not part of what you need to think about. They'll just tell you. How pricing works in the book trade is that, so Jonathan Ball, everything on the subsheet has a price next to it. It doesn't mean the price is going to stay the same when the actual book comes in. Things like the exchange rate going for a ball of shit, the price of moving books around the world, all sorts of things interferes. So there are times certainly when we order a book and it's been subbed to us at 310 Rand as the first one on this is, and it comes in at 420 Rand. Okay, and there's not a lot we can do about that. That's the world. Publishers sell books to bookstores at a recommended retail price. Okay, so let's say 310 Rand or 400 Rand or whatever. And then they give us a discount. Okay? We, as a bookseller, you don't have to stick to the recommended retail price. You can sell the book for whatever you want. Okay, but that is just a starting point. We work on a minimum of a 40% discount with the big trade publishers, Jonathan Ball, NB, Penguin Random House, Pan Macmillan, possibly one or two others. They give us a 45% discount. Smaller publishers, 40%. There are a few publishers, mostly academic publishers, who don't give us that 40%. We mark the book up. We make it more expensive than the recommended retail price so that we make that 40%. If we don't make that 40%, we don't pay our rent. More importantly, I can't pay my salaries. I care more about those than I do the rent. Having said that, if I don't pay the rent, I don't have a shop. If you are publishing a book yourself and you're coming to me, there are two different ways of sorting out that same thing, right? The one is to go, as an author, I need you to pay me 150 Rand per book, okay? And that's absolutely fine, and I'll come back to you and go, I have to add VAT on because you're not registered for VAT because you're a self-published author, you are not a big company. So immediately I add 15% because 15% of whatever I sell the book is not my money, it's government's money, okay? And then I divide by 0.6 to give me my 40% margin. That's it, end of story. I'll come back to you and go, I'm paying you 150 Rand for a book, I can't remember what I said. That means I'll be selling it for 288 Rand. Okay, 15% and our 40% margin. The other way of doing exactly the same sum is to start at the end and go, I want to sell the book, I think you should sell the book for 300 Rand, okay, and then we take VAT off and times by 0.6 instead of divide by 0.6, and I go, this is the piddling amount I'm going to pay you if we're selling the book for 300 Rand, okay. Nobody self-publishes books in order to make a lot of money. Or if they do, they're delusional. Almost as delusional as opening an independent bookstore in order to make a lot of money. People often ask about consignment, right? Particularly as a self-published author. And what that means is you come to me, you give me your books, I put them on the shelf, I try and sell them, but I only pay you if the book actually sells. Rather than me buying your books from you, putting them on the shelf and hoping that they sell, okay? When I started the Book Lounge, we did a fair amount of that. And part of that was about just not having the money to be able to pay people up front. I basically stopped doing that quite a few years ago. And the reason for not doing it is there are a few different reasons. One, it's an administrative nightmare, okay? Because to capture something in your accounting system where I've bought these books from you, but I haven't actually bought them. The people who design accounting packages aren't that cool at handling that shit. And I'm not smart enough with that to find a way around Secondly, I also feel it's kind of unfair to the writer, because I'm taking your stuff, and I'm not taking any risk on it. I'm just going, and I'm not expressing an opinion. Okay, I'm just going, I'm going to take your books and keep bugging me. You know, get hold of me in 3 months' time, get hold of me in 6 months' time. Let's see if one of them is sold, and I'll pay you for one book. It's not a cool way of doing things, right? So we have basically stopped doing that. So if you come to me and you go, if we go to you say, yes, we would like to buy 5 copies of your book, or 10 copies of your book, or 3 copies of your book, you supply us with an invoice, we will pay you generally within 2 or 3 days, maybe a week if I'm having a bad week, okay? And hope to hold that we sell the books, right? Completely different to how we deal with the Jonathan Balls of the world who have lots of money and don't need us to pay them immediately. We have accounts with them, we get to pay them 60 days after we've got the book, all that kind of stuff. There's no ways that we'll deal with self-publishers, small publishers like that. I said at the beginning that we are a small unrepresentative bubble. Please don't take anything I've said and walk into your local branch of Exclusive Books and go, I know how you guys do stuff. Here, 5 books, buy them and give me the money now, because it's not going to work that way. It's a long time since I worked for EB. To the best of my knowledge, the system hasn't changed, and that is, in order to get your books into Exclusive Books, you need to be registered as a vendor on their kind of national vendor system. Okay, a manager at one store can motivate their head office to do that, but they, as far as I know, they can't actually buy the book from you until you've gone through the process with their head office. Okay. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what factors increase the likelihood of book selling from our perspective. The first thing is quite simply the quality of the product. Leaving aside issues of sort of genre and what the book is about and that kind of thing. When I talk about the quality of the product, I'm talking about editing processes. And I'm using the word processes, okay? How many processes has this book actually gone through before it's landed on our shelves, okay? And one of the things that people, is this complete misnomer about self-publishing, in that it democratizes the world of publishing. It means anybody can publish a book. Of course, anybody can publish a book if you've got money. It's expensive. And to publish a book well is even more expensive. The best writers in the world, when they are finished a book, and I don't care what Aoife said just now, maybe there's 2 of them out there, the best writers in the world, and every writer who I've spoken to will tell you that the moment they are finished their book and they hand it over to their agent or their publisher or whatever, it is a long way from what that book ends up on our shelves in customers' hands. They need editors. They need people to work with it. As a self-published author, the more you can do that, the better. Okay? And that is why it is completely class and income determined in terms of what you are able to do. It's very, very sad. The design of a book is incredibly important. I don't understand a lot of things around design. I do know sometimes when I open a book, I can see that the layout is wrong. The layout is crap. I'm not the person you need to come to for information about layout. I don't understand how it works. But all of us can open something and go, this doesn't feel right. Okay? You have to spend money on that, right? The cover of a book is really important. And I brought some books along. We're going to possibly have a little bit of fun in a minute, or 5. Because I sometimes have very strong opinions about covers. But I'm very curious to see how different people in the room respond to that as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But covers are incredibly important for books, both in terms of what they look like, what goes on there, what information is on there as well. If you just think about somebody walking into a bookstore, there are, if you walk into the book lounge, there are approximately 10,000 books in our store. Okay, some of them are spine out, a lot of them are spine out on the shelves. Some of them are face up on display tables. Why does anybody walk into the store picking a book up if they don't know what they're looking for? What do they see in front of them? It's the cover. Cover is incredibly important. In terms of how sort of increasing the likelihood of books being sold, and maybe this is also touching a little bit on some of what Jean-Marie was talking about earlier. One of the things that is really important is your communication with us, okay, and the quality of that communication, and also the sort of humility of it, right? To understand that this thing that you are trying to sell, that you want us to work with you on, is incredibly important to you. And we respect that, and we want the best for you. And you are also the 13th person today whose most important thing we are dealing with, right? And we also have to sell books, not just buy books, okay? So just take that on board and understand that. People often ask us about launches, because we do a lot of launches in the shop, and that is obviously something that is useful in terms of spreading the word about books. Our launches also take a toll on us, right? So at the beginning of the year, I promised myself that we were not going to do more than one event a week, okay? Second week of February, out the bloody window. At the same time, we are we have to be very selective because we are inundated with requests for launches, both from publishers as well as from self-published authors. What we look at is what is the likely turnout? How many people are going to pitch up for your launch, right? 2, what are the likely book sales? Are we actually going to sell copies of your book at your book launch? 3, are we passionate about this? Do we feel that this is a book that this person doesn't know 20,000 people? The book is not going to sell 50 copies at the launch. Hardly anything sells 50 copies at a launch. But we believe in this book, and we are going to do every little thing we can to get it into the public domain. Okay? Those are the things that we look at. Also, whether you're a regular customer and you buy lots of books from us. No, that's not at all. Other things that we do, we have a weekly newsletter that goes out to a very, very big database. Some of whom actually read it. We try and feature as much as possible of new stuff in there. 2 of my colleagues run that newsletter. If you're a self-published author and we contact you and go, we can't find a decent image of the cover online. It's not a criticism. We're not moaning at you. We're just going, can you just help us? Okay, can you work with us on this? Can you provide a bit of content? We'll do that. Okay, but work with us on it. We produce content for our website, which runs alongside our newsletter, but is a little bit different. We do get a lot of people going, why is my book not on your website? Or why is somebody else's book not on your website? Our website is a tiny, tiny, tiny proportion of the books that we have available in store. Okay, it is not linked to our inventory in the store in any kind of magical, automatic, ethery sort of way. It's a manual process. It's labor intensive. We have to adjust quantities on there the whole time so that we don't sell books on our website that we don't actually have. So it's a very, very small proportion of what we've got. There was a brief mention of festivals earlier. Open Book, which we run in September, the actual festival, is also a really important platform, I think, for authors to kind of reach readers and also to reach other authors and to have a sense of community, a place in which you can all sit together and moan about everything with me, because I also do a lot of moan. If sales are important to you, and that sounds a little bit silly, but there are people who publish books who go, they're not actually interested, they don't really care about selling 100 copies or 1,000 copies or what have you. It's not about money, they just want to be able to have their book out there. But for most people, sales are important, right? It's about recouping some of your costs. Work your networks in whatever way you can. Work with us and be nice, right? Don't be demanding, be nice. We're generally quite nice as well. We try to be nice. But if you send us an email and then follow up with a phone call 12 minutes and 14 seconds later and are bitching at us because we haven't replied to your email, not a great way to go in terms of building relationships. And believe me, I'm not making this stuff up, okay? Regularly. Try to work with booksellers as opposed to competing with them. This applies to publishers as well as self-published authors. There's a publisher at the moment in a city in the country who has taken to launching books at their offices rather than in bookstores, okay? Saves them money because they're selling the book themselves directly, okay? What they're also doing is they're competing with booksellers who they want to sell their books to them. Not such a good idea. A lot of anger from booksellers towards that publisher. By the same token, if you're a self-published author, okay, and yeah, we have this whole sort of price conversation, and it's horrible that you know, we have to take 40% and there's VAT and all that. If at all possible, if you're selling the book yourself directly on a website, on social media, to your friends, whatever, try and keep your price the same as what we're selling the book for, and if not, have a conversation with us so at least we know about it. It's a horrible feeling as a bookseller to go to a customer, this book is going to cost you 300 Rand, and for that customer a week later to come back and go, why did I give you 300 Rand for that book? I could have got it for 150 bucks straight from the author on their website. Okay? I'm not saying you can't do that, but communicate with us. There are plenty of times where somebody asks us about a book and we don't have it in stock, we can order it, but we say to them, no, we can order it for you, but it will actually be much cheaper for you to just go directly to the author. We can do that if we know about it. Otherwise, it's a really, really cock feeling. Okay? Do I have anything else to say? He wonders out aloud. I don't. I want to have a quick cover conversation. Are we interested in covers? Okay. I want everybody to just have a look at these and pass them around, circulate them. And then we're going to have a quick conversation about covers. No, you can't read the whole book, Aoife. Just a random thing while I've just been reminded of it. There's so much doom and gloom about the younger generation not reading and all that kind of stuff, and a lot of the stuff that gets said about that I think is absolute nonsense. There are a lot of issues around attention spans and how we're consuming stuff and how we reach people and all of that. A few weeks ago, on a Sunday, I took my dog to Duval Park in City Bowl. And I was just struck by how many, all over the park, there were young people lying on the grass, sitting and reading. And I was like, really, really irritated, because as a bookseller, if I see somebody in public reading, I have to know what they're reading. But these people were all lying on their stomachs reading the bloody books, and I couldn't see what the covers were. But no, yeah. Thank you, Jean-Marie, for puncturing my moment of happiness and lovely memory with the fucking word romantasy. Yes. Yeah, at least. No, I know some people think I'm a snob. I really do not judge what people read. That's not entirely true, but it's not about romantasy, okay? Who would like to say anything about any of the covers that they've just looked at? Let's start with that. Who feels strongly about something that yeah, Kerry?
Yeah. So the interpreters, if I saw that in a bookstore, I wouldn't buy it. I have bought the book, but only because I met a fellow author at Front Row who'd actually been to the talk and raved about the book and the talk and Headley, and I thought, oh, that sounds so incredible, I want to buy it.
Know the writers.
So that's why I bought the book. But if I'd seen it in a bookstore, I would have gone, what
Yeah,
is
it looks
that
like
about?
it looks like a 90s textbook.
Yeah.
Yes, it does look like a
It was very off-putting for me.
Did anybody here like this cover?
I did. But
I did as well. I really, really like this cover. The reason I like this cover is because I was completely intrigued by what the hell it was trying to describe. And one of the things about covers that are incredibly important, and yes, it's subjective, okay? There aren't necessarily rights or wrongs here, or good or bad. But one of the things which I do try and drum into people is that there needs to be a relationship between the cover and the actual book and the content, right? It doesn't help that your cover is the most eye-catching thing in the world and that it's neon pink with yellow stripes or something, which grabs everybody's attention. If it doesn't reflect what the actual book is, then the person who's attracted by the cover, who picks it up, who looks at the book, is going to put it straight down because it's not what they're looking for. Okay, and the reason I like this is because it's a mishmash of different writers, different kinds of narrative nonfiction in South Africa. It's a book which is very difficult to kind of classify and to put in a box. I looked at this and I went, what is that? And then open it up and I go, there's a consistency here. There's a consistency between what's on the outside and what's on the inside. Okay, that was just, yeah. Okay, anybody else want to say anything about any of these covers? Tian.
I noticed that Unsolicited cover was really gripping in the front, on the front cover, and then when I turned it around, I was almost sort of turned off from the layout. Nothing about the content, just I thought it felt too plain, too strange for what the front was. So like unexpectedly let down.
Okay. When you looked at this cover, what were the associations that you made? What was your thought process or your feeling?
I thought of sort of behavior that's unsolicited. I thought of, especially as well, it seemed like a woman sort of swimming in the water, so it seemed like something that's overwhelming, and my head goes to sort of, behavior that women have to deal with in more unsolicited catcalls or harassment or things like this.
Okay. Do you guys, are you familiar with the phrase, it's nearly as bad as romantasy, but it's called cozy crime? Okay, it's become a thing. Okay, Richard Osman is partially responsible for this, a UK writer who made millions about the Thursday Murder Club. Publishers are constantly going, this is cozy crime, okay? And there are rules about what is cozy crime. Being inundated with it, and it's about, there's got to be some crime, but it's not too hectic, it's not too gory, there's got to be resolution, it's got to be quite cool at the end, it's blah, blah, blah. This is a cozy crime book set in the book industry in South Africa. There's a publisher, there's a bookshop, there's somebody who gets killed, blah, 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 blah. Cover? Does it speak to it at all? No. maybe an absolutely beautiful and interesting image, but not for this book. Somebody here, yeah. Okay. Why did that attract your attention?
I immediately know that it's probably set in the Karoo, it's set in South Africa, and that is what I'm going to find inside that book. And because I'm interested in that kind of story, that something felt real and truthful.
And historical as well, because there's a black and white photo that's peeping through, so you know that it's got that historical.
My wife absolutely loves Karoo art. Okay, it leaves me cold. I don't know. Doesn't really do anything for me. Put this picture on a wall, I'll walk straight past it. Both of the images. I think it's an absolutely superb cover for this book for exactly the reasons. Right at the back, absolutely, it's a dual narrative. There's a historical kind of connection between a contemporary story in the Karoo. The cover captures that, it represents it. If this cover appeals to you, you're not going to go, why did I pick this up? Okay. Any other covers? Yeah?
Braids and migraines.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially, I really saw the woman, and she drew me, and then when I read the title, I almost laughed. So I know my hair is different, but my hair, I also sometimes do braids, and my hair is heavy, so I laughed because I could associate with having headaches and migraines, but then it's probably something deeper, and it's not something as superficial as that, and I just wanted to know more about that person.
Okay. I want to ask you to look at two books together. I'm going to put the mic down, sorry. Okay, Braids and Migraines, and Fragile Mental Health of Strong Women. Okay, Andile Xele, Michelle Kokana. Okay, both books that have come out in the last couple of months. Both debut novels by South African black women. Both dealing with what it means to be a black woman in South Africa. Both serious novels. Both, my opinion, absolutely outstanding. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant books. Triggering, lots of difficult content, but absolutely superb. This, for me, kind of reflects a lot of that. I don't know what's going on in this cover. Does anybody look at this cover and go, young black women dealing with trauma? It's like, what are these people thinking?
But I think a few of us were in the morning session. I think it speaks a lot to what, I can't remember if it was from Quella, but what they were saying about the cover is marketing, because the zeitgeist of covers is if we think about the bold colors and having 3 or 4 contrasting colors, if you think about, I can't even think of them off my head because there's so many of them at the moment that are doing this. That is the tone of what the marketing team seem to be doing with books and the moment. And even the Persians one for me feels very the same as a whole bunch of other books that are currently kind of coming through. And so for me, I was immediately drawn to it, not because I think it speaks to anything in the book, but because I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's some kind of layering here. What is the eye about?
Okay. Subjective, interesting. Yeah. When you use words like zeitgeist of something, you lose me because I don't know what the zeitgeist of publishing is. But I wasn't in that session. But the other thing in response to that I would say, which is interesting, I'm not sure about this, but when you talk about trends, okay, part of what people talk about covers, I mean, the language of covers is about wanting something to stand out, right? So isn't what you're trying to do is buck the trend? If there are if there are all these books using the same colors or something, I don't know, then don't you want to do something different? And I mean, it's interesting you used the example of the Persians, because you went, it feels like 25 other covers that you've seen before, right? And maybe I'm just not exposed to that many of those kinds of books, I'm not sure. But I quite like this cover. And the reason I quite like the cover is because I really like the book. Okay, I only actually bought books that, no, not entirely true. And it's a bizarre, absolutely bizarre novel about this Iranian/Persian family, broad family. Most of them are in the States. Some of them are still in what is Iran. But they're incredibly wealthy. They all get together for this sort of really whacked weekend in some ski place in the States. All this shit goes down. But it's really, really, really well written and really unusual. And as I'm talking, I'm kind of liking the cover less because of what you just said about it looking like so many other covers. So I'm sorry I brought that. Yeah, I don't know what that cigarette holder's doing there. Yeah, good book, crap cover. Questions, comments, questions, yeah.
Most important for you that the cover accurately captures and represents the content of what's in the book?
It does. I mean, it's not an exact science, right? But the thing for me is that people come into a bookstore, right, or they browse online, or whatever. I'm not an expert on browsing and how that, the sort of psychological triggers and stuff that happen there. But you come into a bookstore. There are these 3 books here which will be of interest to you because of what you are interested, what you're looking for at the moment, or because more broadly what you're interested in reading. Okay, there are these 3 books here which you're never going to read. Okay, but it can have the most incredible cover which makes you pick it up. You're not going to buy it because it's not for you, and you could walk past the 3 books that are for you because the cover doesn't accurately represent the content. That's the thing.
But, sorry, is that more for authors that are not so well known? I mean, like international titles, you just pick it up. I mean, someone's probably told you, or you come in and see the new ones there, or you read the newsletter. You don't bother much about the title, right?
Absolutely, very good point. I wouldn't say the thing there is about international versus local. I would say the thing there is about how well known an author is, right? And there are a lot of people who they will buy whatever Zygmunt writes next. Okay, Zygmunt's got a new book. I'm there. Lauren Bierkus has got a new book. I'm there. Dion Meyer's got a new book. Who cares what the cover is, right? But we're talking about all the other books, which are not written by somebody with that name recognition, that brand. Yeah.
Why do you think they get the cover wrong? What's going on? I mean, in your perspective.
Because everybody else in the world are absolute idiots. And no. Sorry?
Do the publishing houses, the marketing people, they actually interact with the book sellers? Actually,
interesting question.
This cover,
I do quite often get. There's some of that. I do quite often get people asking for an opinion about a cover. I'm always very reluctant to give that opinion for a couple of different reasons, one of which is the subjectivity of it, and I don't trust my own judgment, and I'm also not a particularly visual person, despite what I just said. The other is, for the most part, I don't actually have a really strong opinion about a cover until I've read the book, because of the thing about consistency, right? I mean, in terms of why people are in my opinion, getting things wrong, again, it's subjective. But I think that there is also a thing of people are so desperate to try and attract attention, and I do think there are a lot of mistakes being made in the industry at the moment. There are definitely a lot of mistakes being made in the industry. I also make a lot of mistakes, but particularly around covers and that mismatch between what the outside of the book is and what the inside of the book is. Let's open it up. How much, I mean, I'll give my reflection to that in a sec, but how many of you, when you're looking at books, whether you're looking in a bookshop or in a library or anywhere else, what impact does it have for you when you see a shot by somebody you know on the cover or on the back cover?
For me, no. I'm more interested in what the person says on social media about that book. Because if they really like the book, they will be promoting it. And so like Hannah Kent, you know, she writes those kind of deep books, I think about some Scandinavian country. I follow her because I'm very interested to see who she reads, and who she puts out. So that for me is more important.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Just a little off covers, but I'm just interested in your many years as a bookseller. I remember going to a talk many years ago and being told the only people who buy South African children's books are grandparents whose kids live overseas. Have you seen any kind of huge change in reading patterns that we now are, you're selling more South African books?
I'm going to come back to that in a sec. Just to stay with Tion's thing for a minute. I don't think that there's a definitive answer to that. I think that people who make decisions about whether they're going to buy something, I think Dion Mayer's shout on Tom Eaton's book has an impact for some people and not for others. I know that when I'm looking at books and I don't know anything about the author, and when Jaco from Jonathan Ball is presenting 6,000 books that are coming out in May, my attention does get grabbed by shouts from authors whose work I really like. I have also at times been really disappointed. And as I've been in the industry for longer, I've also come to understand that a lot of those shouts are about relationships as opposed to the actual book itself. So I met this person at this festival, we became buddies, I really like them, I'll do them a favor. And I have come across quite many examples where writers have given somebody a shout and they don't actually like the book very much. Yeah. As to things having changed, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think in terms of South African kids' books, we have seen an explosion, a positive explosion, of books for young kids by South African writers over the last few years, and particularly by black writers, writing picture books for kids with black characters, which there was a complete dearth of going back however long. The issue of representation is incredibly important everywhere, but never more so than with kids' books. And it's an absolute pleasure for me as a bookseller to have so many wonderful options. When you start going up a little bit, and you start going to the 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and then into teens, there's much less happening in terms of, I think, good South African stories being done in those fields. There is some, absolutely. But I also think that when you hit that point, the books are being sold on their merits, not about whether or not they're South African. Okay, yeah, just my opinion.